On a Wednesday morning, the glass lobby of Halloran Motors gleamed under 100 recessed lights. Eleanor Halloran threw a $100 bill at Nathaniel Brennan's feet in front of 20 employees and a delegation of Japanese investors. "Buy yourself something decent before you walk into my building again. Security, get him out." The bill lay still on the marble. Nate did not bend down, did not pick it up, did not react. He only tightened his grip on the hand of his 7-year-old daughter standing beside him, turned, and walked quietly through the revolving door, leaving the bill untouched behind him. 3 weeks later, the same woman would kneel and beg him to save an $80 million project. 6 hours earlier, the rain came down in sheets along Interstate 94, and the black Bentley sat dead in the right shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly into the storm. Inside, Eleanor Halloran pressed her phone against the window, hunting for one bar of signal. None came. Her assistant had already lost the call twice. The dashboard showed a fuel pressure warning, then nothing at all. The engine clicked, refused to turn over, clicked again. Across town, in a low cinder-block garage with the name Whitaker stenciled above the bay door, Joe Whitaker took the dispatch call and rubbed his jaw. Bentley on the shoulder. High end, probably needs a flatbed. He turned to the only man still on shift. "Nate, you up?" Nathaniel Brennan was already wiping his hands on a rag. He glanced at the small girl swinging her legs on the workbench beside him. "Maddie, sweetheart, we're taking a ride." "In the big truck?" "In the big truck." She climbed into the passenger seat of the tow rig with the seriousness of a small professional, buckled herself in, and opened the coloring book she carried everywhere. The wipers slapped a steady rhythm as Nate eased the truck onto the freeway. He pulled up behind the Bentley 15 minutes later. The woman who stepped out did not look like someone whose car had broken down in the rain. She looked like someone whose meeting had been delayed. "You're late," she said. "Storm, ma'am." Nate kept his voice flat. "Pop the hood, please." He worked under the hood with a small flashlight clamped between his teeth. 6 minutes. He listened to the fuel pump prime, listened to it fail, traced the wiring loom with one gloved finger, and tapped twice on a sealed module near the firewall. "Dual fuel pressure sensor failure," he said, lifting his head. "The primaries reading ghost data and the secondaries defaulting to safe mode. Bentley dealers usually take half a day to find this. I can get you running for tonight." Eleanor stared at him. "You're a tow driver?" "Yes, ma'am." He pulled a kit from the truck, bypassed the failed sensor with a temporary jumper, and reset the engine control unit through the diagnostic port. The Bentley turned over on the second crank and held a smooth idle. He closed the hood. "Drive it straight to a dealer in the morning. Don't push it past 60 tonight." She did not thank him. She produced a black credit card from her coat pocket and held it out between 2 fingers. "How much?" $120. "Cash, please." "Cash, cash." She studied him for a long moment, then took out her wallet, counted 6 20s, and laid them in his palm without touching his glove. As she turned back toward the Bentley, the passenger window of the tow truck slid down. A small face peered out, framed by yellow rain hood and curls. "Bye, lady. Drive safe." Eleanor looked up. The little girl waved. Eleanor's hand stopped halfway to her own car door. The face above the wave-round cheeks, gap in the front teeth, eyes set wide was the face Eleanor had carried in a leather wallet for 24 years. Her twin sister Claire, dead at 12 in a car that had skidded the wrong way on a wet road. The same wide-set eyes, the same shy half-smile. Eleanor's grip on the door handle went bone-white. She did not say a word. She got into the Bentley. She drove away into the rain. Nate climbed back into the truck. Maddie was already coloring again, humming under her breath. "She seemed sad, Daddy." "Some people are, sweetheart. Buckle up. Let's go home." The next morning broke clear and cold. Joe Whitaker came in early with a small wooden crate and a clipboard. "Restored intake assembly. Customer wants it delivered today, before 9, Halloran Motors, downtown. Just leave it at the front desk." Nate looked at the crate, then at his watch. "Maddie's preschool is closed today." Pipe burst. "Bring her. 5 minutes, in and out." So Nate packed her drawing pad into her backpack and drove the truck downtown. He parked in the visitor lot, lifted the crate onto a handcart, and took Maddie's hand. The lobby was full. A delegation of suited men stood near the reception desk. The receptionist barely glanced up. "Deliveries through the loading dock." "Mr. Whitaker," said front desk. "It's a custom restoration." "Loading dock." A man in a charcoal suit broke off from the delegation and strolled over with the slow walk of someone who enjoyed his own importance. Victor Crane, Chief Operating Officer. He looked Nate up and down, took in the work boots and the small girl, and smiled without warmth. "Sir, this is a corporate lobby. Use the service entrance like the rest of the help." Maddie pressed against her father's leg. Nate did not answer Crane. He looked past him toward the elevator bank where the doors had just opened. Eleanor Halloran stepped out flanked by the same Japanese investors. Her eyes swept the lobby, found Nate, and stopped. For one heartbeat, recognition flickered. Then something colder rose behind it. She walked across the marble floor with the investors trailing, stopped 6 feet from him, and reached into her coat pocket. "You again. Ma'am, last night you charged me $120 to bypass a sensor. This morning you walk into my building like you belong here." She drew out a single $100 bill, snapped it once between her fingers, and let it fall. "Buy yourself something decent before you walk into my building again. Security, get him out." The bill settled on the marble between them. The lobby went still. Nate did not pick it up. He did not argue. He did not even look at Eleanor. He looked down at his daughter, squeezed her hand. "Let's go, sweetheart." He turned. As they passed the reception desk, he set the crate carefully on the counter and laid the invoice on top, signed at the bottom in clean engineer's print. N. Brennan, McLaren Applied, read. The receptionist did not read it. She slid it under a stack of menus. Nate walked out through the revolving door with his daughter's hand in his. Outside, in the parking lot, Maddie tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, why didn't that lady like us?" Nate stopped walking. He knelt down on one knee on the cold pavement, eye level with her, and used his thumb to wipe a small bead of moisture from her cheek that might have been rain or might not have been. "She doesn't hate us, baby. She just doesn't know how to look at people yet. Will she learn? Maybe. Some people take a long time." He lifted her up onto his hip, the way he had done since she was 3, carried her to the truck, and did not look back at the building. That night, in a windowless engineering bay 40 floors above the river, Sam Park, Halcyon's lead engineer, opened the wooden crate. He lifted out the restored intake assembly, turned it in the light, and whistled at the precision of the work. Then he saw the invoice taped inside the lid. He read the signature line once. He read it again. He sat down hard on a stool and reached for his phone with a hand that had gone slightly cold. "Eleanor, it's Sam. We have a problem. The man you threw out of the lobby this morning, I need you to listen carefully. You just escorted out the only person in North America who can save Halcyon." She did not believe him at first. She believed him by midnight. The emergency meeting was called at 12:30. The conference room sat below the engineering floor, walls of dark glass, a single long table. The Halcyon GT prototype glowed softly under spotlights. Through the viewing window, a low, sculpted shape in matte silver. The cabin glass tinted to black, its $80 million concept body so smooth it seemed to absorb the light. 40 engineers, 6 executives, and 3 lawyers crowded the table. The problem had a name: frequency resonance failure in the hybrid powertrain at speeds above 280 kilometers per hour. The first prototype had cracked its driveshaft housing at the test track in Arizona. The second had detonated its battery enclosure in a sealed cell in Berlin. Geneva was 19 days away. The investors had wired $80 million contingent on a public reveal that would not happen if the car could not run. Sam Park stood at the head of the table, with a slide projected behind him. He did not look at Eleanor. He looked at the room. There are 4 foundational patents in the world for resonance dampening in hybrid powertrains at supercar speeds. They are filed under different employer names, but all 4 were authored by the same engineer, Nathaniel Brennan. McLaren Applied, retired, disappeared from the industry 3 years ago after a personal tragedy. We have approached him 4 times in the last 18 months. He has refused every offer. He clicked the slide forward. A photograph appeared. Halloran's own lobby camera, time-stamped 9:14 a.m. that morning. A man in a work jacket, holding a small girl's hand, walking out through the revolving door. A $100 bill on the marble at his back. Eleanor's hand closed around the edge of the table. She did not breathe for several seconds. "That's him," Sam said quietly. "That's Nathaniel Brennan. That is the man you had escorted from this building 18 hours ago." Someone at the far end of the table actually laughed a single, shocked, involuntary sound, and then went silent. Eleanor sank back in her chair. Her face did not move. Her eyes did. They went somewhere far away. In the corner of the room, Victor Crane lifted his coffee cup to hide a small, slow smile. Sam was still talking. There is something else you need to understand. Brennan does not need money. The standing offer from Mercedes-AMG is $1.8 million a year and equity. Porsche has offered him a department. He turned them all down. He works at a small independent garage in southwest Detroit. He picks up his daughter from preschool at 3:30 every Wednesday and Friday. He eats lunch out of a thermos. We sent a recruiter out last spring. She came back and told us she has never met a man harder to bribe in her life. Sam laid both hands flat on the table. Money will not bring him back, Eleanor. Whatever you do not insult him with money. Eleanor did not respond for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was steady but very quiet. What does he want? That, Sam said, is what we have to find out. And we have 19 days. In the corner, Victor Crane set down his coffee cup with great care, as if not to spill a single drop, and watched Eleanor's face in the dark glass. She was at the gate of Whitaker Garage by 6:15 the next morning. No driver, no assistant. She had taken her own car and parked across the street. Through the chain-link fence, she could see the inside of the bay. A 1967 Ford Mustang sat raised on a lift. Below it stood Nathaniel Brennan in a worn flannel, working a wrench against a fastener with the slow patience of a man who had nowhere else to be. On a wooden crate by the bench, Maddie sat cross-legged with a sketch pad, humming. Eleanor stood at the fence for a long minute. She had rehearsed 3 different opening lines in the car. None of them seemed possible now. The side door of the garage opened. An older man, wide in the shoulders, 60-something, with hands that had not been cleaned since he was 19, stepped out onto the gravel. Joe Whitaker. He walked across the lot to the fence, stopped on his side of it, and looked her over. You're the one who threw money at him yesterday. She did not deny it. He told me about you. Ikamitu. I don't think you did, Joe said mildly. I think you came because you need something, but I'm telling you now, as the man who taught that boy how to hold a torque wrench, he's been through enough. Leave him alone. Eleanor lifted her chin, the old reflex. Mr. Whitaker, I don't think you understand. I understand fine, ma'am. I knew his daddy. I watched him bury his wife. I watched him quit a job other men would kill for so he could put his kid on a school bus. He is finished with people like you. Go home. She stood there. She did not have a counter. She slid a business card under the fence wire embossed gray, name, single phone number, and got back in her car. That afternoon, just after 3, the preschool bus stopped at the corner. Maddie hopped down with her backpack and her sketch pad, ran to the empty playground beside the lot, and sat in a swing. The wind picked up. A loose sketchbook page lifted off her lap and skipped across the gravel. Eleanor, who had not gone back to the office, who had been sitting in her car at the curb watching the playground for an hour, opened her door. She walked across the lot, knelt, picked up the page. A small voice behind her. You're the lady who made my daddy sad. Eleanor turned slowly. Maddie stood with her hands behind her back, sketch pad against her hip. Not angry, not afraid, just looking. Eleanor's voice failed. Yes, I did. Why? I don't know. Maddie thought about that. Then she pulled the sketch pad from behind her back and held out a finished drawing, two-handed, like a gift. I drew this for you. Eleanor took it. A black Bentley in the rain. A woman with pale hair sitting in the driver's seat. A man in coveralls beside the car, smiling. Above them, in careful 7-year-old letters, You drive a nice car, lady. Something in Eleanor's chest broke quietly. Her eyes filled, fast. She tried to swallow it down. She could not. Why, she whispered. Why did you draw this for me? Daddy says everyone gets to be drawn nice once. The garage door opened. Nate stepped out, took 2 long strides across the gravel, and pulled Maddie behind him with one arm. What are you doing here, Mrs. Halloran? I was just... Step back from my daughter, please. Eleanor stepped back. She was holding the drawing in both hands. She tried to speak. She tried to say, I am sorry, the words that should have come out yesterday morning, and had not. They did not come out now either. She held out the business card again. He did not take it. She walked back to her car with the drawing still in her hand. She set it on the passenger seat. She drove away. Nate stood at the bay door for a long time, his daughter's hand back in his. Daddy. Was she crying? I think so, baby. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. Halloran sent its first envoy on Thursday. The head of human resources arrived at the garage in a tailored suit with a contract folder and an offer of $800,000 for a 6-month consultancy. Nate listened politely, made him coffee, and walked him out without signing anything. On Friday, Sam Park came himself. No suit, no folder, just a thermos of coffee and a printout of the halcyon resonance data. He did not offer money. He offered scientific co-authorship and a public name on the patents. Nate read the data for 40 minutes in silence. Then he handed it back. Sam, your numerator is wrong. You're measuring the wrong harmonic. Your team is going to chase this for another 6 weeks before they figure it out. Then come tell us in person. I can't. Why? Nate did not answer. He walked Sam back to his car. On Saturday night, Eleanor came alone. The garage was closed. Rain was coming down again, the slow, steady kind that meant late October in Detroit. She parked at the curb, walked up the cracked drive in flat shoes, and stood under the dripping eave of the office door. She had a folded check in her coat pocket. She had not allowed herself to count the zeros. The office light was on. Nate opened the door before she knocked. He looked at her, then past her at the rain, then back. My daughter is asleep on the couch in there. Keep your voice down. He stepped aside. The office was small. A desk, 2 chairs, a coffee maker, a cot in the corner where Maddie lay under a folded jacket, breathing slow. Nate poured Eleanor coffee in a chipped white mug and set it on the desk. He did not sit down. She set the check on the desk between them. She did not look at it. She did not look at him. It's blank. You write the number. Any number. Whatever brings you back for 19 days. He looked at the check. Then he looked at the small shape of his daughter on the cot. Then he looked at Eleanor, Mrs. Halloran. My wife died 3 years ago in September. She was driving a hybrid prototype on loan from a testing partner. The car had a resonance failure in the powertrain at high speed, the same kind of failure your prototype is having now. The car came apart on a wet road, and she did not come home, and our daughter spent her 4th birthday at a funeral. Eleanor did not move. I left the industry, he said quietly, because I could not work on the same systems that killed her without losing my mind. I work here because Joe lets me pick my daughter up at 3. I do not need $800,000. I do not need a blank check. I will not come back to save another car that might kill another wife, so you can hit a launch date in Geneva. He pushed the check, gently, back across the desk toward her. For a long moment she did not breathe. Then she said, very quietly, I am sorry. About yesterday morning. It was not enough. They both knew it was not enough, but it was the first true thing she had said in his presence. She picked up the check. She did not finish the coffee. She walked out into the rain. The door clicked shut. In the dim office, Maddie shifted under the jacket and sat up, hair tousled, cheek printed with fabric. She rubbed her eyes. Daddy? Yes, baby, that lady. She was so sad. Her voice was small. Can we help her? Nate sat down on the edge of the cot. He did not answer for a long time. Outside, taillights moved down the wet street. He could see them faintly through the window. He kissed the top of his daughter's head. I'll think about it, sweetheart. I'll think about it. He sat there in the dark until the rain stopped. Sunday morning he drove downtown alone. Joe had Maddie at the garage with promises of pancakes. Nate parked the truck in the visitor lot of Halloran Motors at 7:45, walked into the lobby in the same flannel he had worn the day she threw money at him, and stopped at the marble desk. Tell Mrs. Halloran that Brennan is here. Not for money. The receptionist looked up, recognized him, picked up the phone, and made the call without saying a word. Eleanor was downstairs in 3 minutes. She did not speak in the elevator. She took him to the underground engineering bay on level B2, where the Halcyon GT prototype sat under cool work lights, hood open, exposed like a body on a table. Sam Park was there, and 2 other lead engineers, and no one else. Nate walked the perimeter of the car for 40 minutes. He did not say a word. He pressed his palm flat against the carbon fiber engine cover and held it there for a full minute, the way a doctor listens to a chest. He bent over the inverter housing, traced a finger along a weld seam, tapped twice with a knuckle. He squatted by the rear axle and listened to nothing in particular for a long time. Finally he straightened. I need a sheet of A3 paper and a 4H pencil. Sam ran for them himself. Nate sat down on the polished concrete floor, crossed his legs, laid the paper across his knee, and began to write. Not draw. Write. Equations in tight, clean engineer's print, line after line, transcribing something already finished in his head. He did not stop for 35 minutes. He filled 10 pages. When he was done, he handed them to Sam without a word. Sam read the first page, then the second. By the third, his hands were shaking very slightly. By the fifth, he had to sit down on a crate. He read all 10 pages without speaking. Then he read the last page again. He looked up at Eleanor. "This is the answer," he said. 10 handwritten pages. The thing 40 engineers couldn't crack in 6 months. He just wrote it on the floor. Eleanor's gaze stayed on Nate. "Mr. Brennan, name your terms." Nate did not stand up. He stayed seated on the floor with his hands resting loose on his knees and looked up at her. "No salary, no title, no contract. I will work as an unpaid consultant for 16 days. I leave at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays and Fridays for my daughter." "Done." "I'm not finished." She waited. "Halloran Motors will publicly retract its current advertising claim that the Halcyon GT achieves perfect safety at top speed. You will issue that retraction this week. You will commission an independent third-party verification program before any production unit is sold. You will name that program. And you will fund the families of any drivers killed by the resonance failures that came before this one." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Mr. Brennan, that is corporate suicide 3 weeks before launch. That is the price." She looked at him sitting on her concrete floor in his work clothes, the 10 pages between them, and understood that he was not negotiating. He was offering her the chance to be a different kind of company. She could take it or refuse it. "Done," she said. "All of it." She did not even blink. In the corridor outside the bay, behind a panel of dark glass that no one in the room looked toward, Victor Crane stood very still. He had heard every word. His face did not move. After a long moment, he turned, walked to the far stairwell, and pulled out a phone he never used in the building. He stepped into the stairwell and shut the door behind him before he dialed. The number rang twice. A man with a German accent picked up. "It's Crane. We have a problem. He's back." For 16 days, Halloran Motors did not sleep. The B2 engineering bay turned into a war room. Whiteboards covered the walls. Nate stood at the central terminal with Sam Park, walking the team through the resonance correction in 20-minute briefings, 3 times a day. The first prototype was rebuilt in 72 hours. The second came online by day 8. The third ran a clean lap at 320 kilometers per hour on the test loop in northern Michigan on day 11. The whole team cheered. Nate did not. He just nodded once. He left every Wednesday and Friday at exactly 5 o'clock. On the first Friday, Eleanor watched him gather his coat from the back of a chair, lift his hand in a small goodnight to Sam, and walk out without explanation. She turned to the engineer beside her. "Where does he go?" "He picks up his daughter from her art class, the one on Fort Street. She does watercolors on Fridays." Eleanor went back to her office. She did not say anything. The next morning, she asked her assistant to find out what time public schools in Detroit dismissed on Wednesdays. She did not tell the assistant why. On the second Friday evening, Eleanor drove to Nate's house personally. She had a stack of design drawings that needed his sign-off before Monday. She was 3 blocks from the address when she stopped at a red light and realized she had never been to a colleague's home in her entire career. The house was small, white siding, a porch with a wind chime, a single light over the front door. She knocked. Maddie answered. The little girl's whole face lit up as if Eleanor were a visiting aunt she had been waiting for all week. "You came. I have papers for your dad." "Daddy, the lady is here. She came." Nate appeared behind her in the hallway, drying his hands on a kitchen towel. "Mrs. Halloran, I'm sorry. This won't take long." "Stay for dinner," Maddie said, with absolute authority. "Oh, I made the pasta myself," Maddie said. Daddy supervised. Eleanor looked at Nate. Nate hesitated for 1/2 second, then stepped aside. "Come in." The kitchen was small and warm. There was pasta on the table, a salad in a chipped wooden bowl, a glass of milk by the third-place setting where Maddie had insisted on putting it the moment she heard the doorbell. Eleanor sat. She had not eaten in someone's home in 20 years. Maddie talked through most of the meal. School, the spelling test, a boy who ate a crayon, the watercolor of a horse she was working on. Nate listened the way fathers listen, without interrupting. Eleanor, across the table, let herself laugh once, then a second time. The sound surprised her. Halfway through dinner, Maddie put down her fork and looked at Eleanor seriously. "Do you have any sisters?" Eleanor's hand went still on her water glass. Nate looked up. I had a sister. A twin. Her name was Claire. What happened? There was a car accident. We were 12. Oh, Maddie thought about that. That's why your eyes are sad sometimes. Eleanor's throat closed. She nodded, unable to speak. Across the table, Nate was looking at her, really looking for the first time. Not at the CEO. At the woman. His hand on his water glass tightened, almost imperceptibly. He set the glass down. After dinner, Maddie pressed a folded sheet of paper into Eleanor's hand at the door. A new drawing. 3 figures at a kitchen table. A man, a woman, a small girl, all smiling. Above them, "Good night, from us." Eleanor folded the drawing carefully and tucked it inside her notebook beside the one of the Bentley. Driving home, halfway across the bridge, her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Unknown number. A single text. "Brennan is hiding something from you about September 17th, 2022. Ask him what really happened that day." Her foot slipped off the accelerator. The car drifted. She caught it. She pulled over onto the shoulder, hazard lights blinking, and read the message 3 times. September 17th, 2022. The day his wife died. She did not sleep that night. She did not ask him. 3 days before Geneva, the world fell apart at 2:13 in the morning. The diagnostic alarm in the B2 bay went off first. Then every alarm in the building. The Halcyon Central Control firmware had been overwritten. Someone had pushed a corrupted patch through an internal authentication token. The resonance correction modules were now running an old, broken parameter set. The car would crack itself apart on the first hard run. Eleanor was at the building in 14 minutes, hair still wet, no makeup, coat thrown over a sweater. Sam Park was already there. So was Nate, who had driven in with Maddie in the back seat asleep under his coat. He carried her into Eleanor's office, laid her on the long leather couch, kissed her forehead, and shut the door softly behind him. He went down to B2 and went to work. 2 hours later, at 4 a.m., he stood in front of the executive committee and the chairman of the board. He laid a printout on the table. The corruption was pushed through an internal token at 1:51 a.m. The token was issued 9 minutes earlier by a dormant administrator account. That account belongs to Victor Crane. Heads turned. The patch references an external IP. I traced it. Munich. A holding company affiliated with one of our European competitors. Mr. Crane is currently being held at the south entrance by building security. 2 of the executives made noises of disbelief. The chairman did not. He had known Victor for 20 years and had been waiting, quietly, for several months. By 5 a.m. Crane was in handcuffs in the lobby, his face expressionless. He had been promised 12% of Halloran's share value in the event of a failed Geneva launch and a shareholder revolt. He would not see daylight without a court order for a long time. The committee dispersed. Sam went back to the bay to start the firmware rollback. Eleanor and Nate were left in the conference room. She slid her phone across the table. The anonymous text from Friday. "Did you send this?" "No." She tapped the IP. It came from Crane's burner phone, the same burner that pushed the firmware corruption. Nate exhaled slowly. He understood. Crane had been trying to break them apart for days. She looked up at him. Her eyes were red. "She had been awake for 23 hours. I didn't ask. I want you to know that. I didn't ask. Ask now." She opened her mouth, closed it, and asked, "What happened on September 17th, 2022? The day Sarah died?" He did not answer right away. He sat down across from her. He folded his hands on the table. "My wife was driving an Audi e-tron prototype on loan from a third-party validation firm. The car had a known resonance vulnerability at high speed. There is an internal report I have kept in a safe deposit box for 3 years. The man who signed off on the validation testing despite the warning was the chief executive at the time of a partner company. That partner company was Halloran Motors. The man who signed was your father." The room went very quiet. "I never released the report," Nate said. 2 reasons. I did not want my daughter to grow up reading lawsuits about her mother in the news, and I did not want to ruin a man whose only living daughter I had never met. Eleanor put her hand over her mouth. She was crying without sound. "I did not come back here to take revenge on your father," he said quietly. "I came back to make sure Halcyon does not kill anyone else. You did not cause what happened to my wife. You do not owe me a debt. But what kind of company Halloran becomes from this morning on, that is a choice that belongs to you." She nodded once, hand still over her mouth, tears running down between her fingers. He let her cry. He did not move to comfort her. He simply sat across the table and let her have the grief that should have come 20 years late. Geneva. The Halcyon GT rolled onto the test ribbon at the Palexpo under 2,000 cameras. A hush fell over the hall when the driver climbed in. 19 days of work, 3 lost prototypes, and 1 dead engineer's wife had brought the car to this lap. The engineer driver took it past 100 kilometers per hour, then 200, then 300, then 320. No tremor, no alarm. The car held the line as if cut from one piece of steel. The hall stood up. The applause lasted 6 minutes. 2 German executives in the front row did not clap. They stared at the car as if it had personally betrayed them. Eleanor took the stage in a charcoal suit, a single sheet of paper in her hand. She did not read from it. She looked out at the press. 3 things. First, Halloran Motors is retracting our advertising claim of perfect safety at top speed. No machine is perfectly safe. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. Second, we are establishing the Halloran Safety Fellowship, funded at $25 million, for the families of victims of high-performance vehicle failures. Applications open Monday. Third, our independent verification program has a name. We are calling it Project 17. A reporter raised a hand. Why 17? That is private. She left the stage. The press did not get a follow-up question. Nate watched from the back of the technical pit, headset on, in a clean black work jacket without insignia. He had asked her not to mention his name. She had not. He did not clap. He just nodded once and walked out the service door before the lights came up. That night, in a quiet hotel hallway on the 3rd floor of the Beau Rivage, Eleanor stood at his door. She did not knock loudly. He opened it. She did not come inside. She handed him a thick envelope. This is not to buy you. This is so that someday, when she is grown, your daughter knows that her father saved a company that did not deserve him, and helped turn it into one that did. He opened the envelope. Inside, a stock transfer document. 2% of Halloran Motors, common shares, in the name of Madison Brennan, age 7, held in trust until majority. Below it, in her own hand, a single line. You raised her alone. Let me help carry one corner. He read the line twice. He did not speak. He folded the paper carefully and slid it back inside the envelope. He looked up. She was already turning to go. He did not stop her with words. He waited until she was 3 steps down the corridor. Maddie wants to know if you can come for dinner Sunday. She froze. Pasta again. 7 o'clock. She did not turn around. She nodded once, head still down. Her hand tightened on the strap of her bag. Yes, she said, very quietly. I can come. She walked the rest of the way down the long yellow corridor without looking back, because if she had turned, he would have seen what was on her face. He closed the door softly. From the other side, he could hear her footsteps stop once, halfway down the hall, and then start again. 6 weeks later, early spring in Detroit. The salt was off the streets. The river had cracked open. There was a new sign over the bay door at the corner of West Verner, and Junction neat black letters on a clean white field. Brennan and Whitaker. Independent Engineering Consultancy. Joe stood on the gravel with a customer, thumbs in his belt loops, grinning. The boy's got his own name on the door now. About time. At 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, a small gray Subaru pulled up to the curb in front of a small white house on a side street. Eleanor Halloran stepped out, no driver, no Bentley, no bodyguard. She had a covered dish in her hands. An apple pie. The crust was a little burnt on one corner. She had baked it herself, the first thing she had baked in 20 years. The front door flew open before she reached the porch. Maddie sprinted across the yard barefoot and wrapped both arms around Eleanor's waist with the absolute confidence of a child who knew exactly where she belonged. You came. I brought a pie. It's a little burnt. I know. That's okay. Maddie pulled her inside. Dinner was pasta. Of course it was. Maddie talked through most of it, school stories. A boy who put a worm in his pocket. A teacher who could not whistle. Eleanor told them, quietly, that Project 17 had received 203 applications already, from families in 14 states. Nate listened. He did not say much, but once, when he reached across the table to pass Eleanor the salad bowl, his hand brushed hers for half a second. She did not pull away. He did not either. After dinner, Maddie fell asleep on the couch with a stuffed rabbit under one arm and her drawing pad open on her chest. Nate came over with a folded throw blanket and tucked it around her shoulders. He bent and kissed her hair. He stood there for a moment, looking at her sleeping face. In the kitchen, Eleanor was at the sink rinsing dishes. She did not hear him come in. He stood next to her without speaking. She handed him a wet plate. Her hand was shaking just a little. He took the plate. His fingers closed over hers and stayed there a beat longer than they needed to. Neither of them looked at each other. Then he set the plate aside. "Come outside a minute." The back porch was small, 2 wooden steps down to a patch of grass and a sagging picnic table. Above them, the Detroit sky had gone deep blue at the edges, and the first real stars of spring were out. The night was cool and full of crickets. He did not say "I love you." She did not say "I am sorry" again. He took her hand, opened her palm, and pressed something small and metal into it. An old key, brass, worn smooth at the edges. The spare key to Whitaker Garage. "In case your car ever dies on the freeway again at midnight," he said, "so you don't have to throw money at anybody." She started to laugh. Then she started to cry. Then she laughed again, both at once, the way people do when something they thought was lost comes back. He did not let go of her hand. Inside the house, on the couch, Maddie smiled in her sleep. The camera, if there had been a camera, would have pulled back then past the porch, past the small yard, up over the rooftops of the quiet street, up over the bridges and the river and the city that had taught all 3 of them how to begin again. The wind moved through the maple trees. A dog barked once, far away. The crickets kept singing. The screen would have gone dark slowly, with no words, just the crickets, just the spring.